Hi, my name is Kai, and today I'm going to tell the story of how I ended up spending 10 years plus exploring everything to do with mental health. A little over 10 years ago, I wanted nothing to do with mental health. I was addicted to drugs, I was masking all of my own issues, I was avoiding my trauma, just like so many people. I was making music videos, I was working in the music industry, attending live events, recording live shows. I was involved in tattoo culture. I was involved in cars, all the stuff that was fun and exciting on screen because I was into filmmaking. I was just surrounded by all the wrong kinds of environments. Not that any of that stuff's not cool, music's still cool, cars are cool, tattoos are cool, but the circles that I found myself in were just a bunch of people just like me, avoiding all of our problems with drugs and alcohol and entertainment, basically. And then my wake-up call came when I met a young girl, and she was covered in self-harm scars, which, I'd heard of self-harm before, but to be confronted with somebody that's literally, there's more scar than skin, is what I'm talking about. And she told me her story. And for whatever reason, I couldn't leave it alone. I couldn't forget about it. And I decided to investigate how she ended up in the position that she was in. And she was happy to tell me, there was a adolescent facility in Ipswich, or near Ipswich, called Barrett. And it was for acute mental health, for teenagers that were at risk of taking their own lives. And that place got shut down by the government against all recommendations, and 3 kids died, took their own lives. So, all of a sudden, I had this moment in my journey, this fork in the road. I saw purpose, something worth fighting for. Never had a taste of that before. I've just been filming nonsense and just anything for a laugh and to escape reality and to escape our problems. And there's my problem staring me right in the face, but I felt differently about it. I was like, I could do something about this with the resources and the knowledge and the skills that I have. I make films. And that's what I kind of said, my whole business was getting attention, making people look at me, making people look at the band that I was trying to promote, making people come to the show. So I was like, I'm great at this. We'll just make some noise. We'll make some noise. We'll tell a story, and we'll get everybody mad about this. We'll get everybody behind you, and we'll fight this thing, and we'll get some change in the world. And how naive I was back in 2014. I actually thought it was going to be that simple. This isn't right. Let's make some noise. We'll get a bunch of support, and the world will change, and it'll be all sunshine and rainbows. I went from typical videos that were going onto different platforms with different people were 100,000, 1 million plus, to hundreds, 3 digits when I started making mental health content. And immediately that felt again, that fork in the road, do I want to fight for this thing? But you can't just walk away because you didn't get what you wanted. I don't know, it was a deeply personal moment. I couldn't walk away from it. And what also happened simultaneously in me as I was actually acknowledging what, this crisis in the community, that this centre had been closed and people had actually died and all of that, it also sort of brought my own stuff to the surface, and I started to acknowledge I've been drinking and doing drugs consecutively, constantly for years, and I actually have a lot of issues myself, and it was a positive thing and a negative thing, because I started to go, oh, maybe I've got depression, maybe I've got anxiety, maybe I've got these issues, and I started to look at myself for the first time in many, many years, maybe my entire life, and just actually acknowledge I got some stuff going on too. And it's sort of, I was angry that the people who were already looking for help didn't get the help that they needed and they ended up dead. But I was sort of angry too, this sort of anger came up in me personally that like that's kind of why I've never dealt with my issues, because I've always had this underlying uncertainty about society and community and the structures and the systems around me. Like if I did want to go and sort my life out, where would I go? And what kinds of people are actually there to support us, and what kinds of institutions exist? And honestly, I've always felt like there's not anything there for us. But I decided not to hold that belief and assumption anymore. And I thought, let's explore this. So 2014 is when I met that girl. And that's when I had that like big shift, fork in the road moment. Here we are. Let's look at mental health. Let's acknowledge it. Let's not pretend that we can just mask our problems for the rest of our lives. Because I was on a bad track myself. Like I don't know where I would have ended up if that fork in the road didn't present itself. So yeah, there you go. Started making mental health content. Started by, in the first couple of years, we were just looking for people who were willing to sit down on the couch with me and tell their story. What's going on with you? They started off like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, then we're going over an hour. Just real people, real stories. People that have experienced like parents that have introduced them to like needle drugs at the age of 13 to help the kids cope, because that's the only way the parents knew how to cope. Unbelievable stuff for the day-to-day person. Like this isn't stuff that you can just bring up in conversation at brunch. But we were posting it on YouTube. I called it a living documentary. I put it out there to everybody. I'm going to spend 10 years researching mental health and exploring mental health. Everything outside the mainstream is what we're interested in. What else is out there that people aren't aware of? That was my key focus. So what's really going on with people? And let's have these conversations in a transparent way so that everybody can just see, like, this is exactly what's going on. There's no sugarcoating it. We didn't really edit them that much. We only edited out long pauses or ums and ahs or bits that just where somebody like lost their train of thought and it didn't really go anywhere. Like we didn't edit out any of the real content. Like it was just absolutely real. And again, that's I could call myself naive with that step as well, because that was perceived as like a really hectic, like over the top thing to be doing, which also was pretty psychologically revealing about me as an individual person, as the person behind this project that was emerging. Like he thinks it's appropriate to just put that out there, you know. It was confronting. Every step of this thing was confronting to me. So I'm going to all these different people, and some of the stuff that kept coming up a lot was like psychosis and admission to the psych ward and getting out of the psych ward, and the cycle of just being institutionalized and then put back on the street before you're ready, and all these pieces, depression, anxiety, different medications that people were trying that weren't working. A lot more people saying that they'd been through like a cocktail of different medications and it hadn't worked than people saying that it had worked. I had like, you know, one in every so many would be like, I found a medication, it's solved my issue. But then as well, because it was such a longitudinal thing and it was like 10 years long, we'd check in with those people later and we'd see actually they were just in a window where that medication was working, and eventually the effect of the medication wasn't enough to mask the issue, just like all the alcohol and like other things that we were taking. I was addicted to pharma for maybe 5 years straight. I thought that was the solution to all of my problems too. I was just taking pharma, like that would make me feel like I could face the day. It'd make me feel like I could do anything that I needed to do, and I thought I'd solved all my problems. But I had the same thing, like over the years or even months, like I'd build up the tolerance to the drug. As all drugs, you build up a tolerance to, and then I would have to either take a break or wean myself off it and go through all the withdrawals and everything, and then the cycle was just repeating, and I wasn't actually developing any new skills or growing as a person or facing my trauma or anything. I was just in survival mode for 5 years straight. I feel like I wasted those years completely. So that's just where I was at alongside all this stuff. So I had a bias against medication. I had a bias against most systems, like most institutions, hospitals, because the stories that I was hearing and my personal observations and my personal encounters were all painting a very negative picture of all the things that were available. So I started to sort of reinforce my belief that, like, that's why I didn't ever deal with my mental health. That's why it's safer just to be a man, be strong, men don't cry, all of those stereotypes, like maybe they're actually the way to go. That's what I was thinking. But sort of 2016 to 2018 was a lot of that lived experience type stuff. And then during that period, it started to shift a little bit, because I had a couple of guests come on and they started to talk about what was working for them and how they'd changed their lives and how they'd done this and that. And I started to ask the question, like, okay, so what are the solutions to these problems? And what are the really, it's still that very personal, individualized storytelling where someone just comes on with their lived experience. We don't edit it and they just speak their own truth. But instead of looking for people that had lived experience of all the tragedies and suffering and going around in circles, I started deliberately looking for people that had that history, but now they were in a new, like, positive life in their future, living their dreams, or even not living their dreams. If it didn't have to be that extreme, just not stuck anymore. Like they're taking positive steps and they're changing their lives and they feel like they're actually onto something. Started to discover those people. And then during that phase, like maybe 2017 onwards, it started to shift. I was also like, I was a guinea pig. Like I made myself a guinea pig. I was like, okay, I'm going to also try these alternative therapies. I'm going to try all of these options. I'm going to look into kinesiology. I'm going to look into like whatever it is that people were giving me crystals and stuff. I never really got into like the really new age stuff because I had the feeling like that's not really, you know, each to their own, but I'm just not that guy. But I was listening and I was allowing everybody just to speak their truth. And that was also around the era that like psychedelics became big for me, because that was like, it was receiving a lot of positive attention in like scientific journals and around the world, and people were saying it's the cure for depression that we never knew and all of these pieces. So I experimented with psychedelics for a few years, like pretty heavily. And again, it felt like that great promise, like, oh yeah, this is actually doing something for me. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm making some changes. But my personal opinion on that was, it was just another thing that, it was a cul-de-sac for me. It was a dead end. Psychedelics just give me more questions than answers. They gave me new issues, like just like any drug, you get a side effect or whatever. They made me, they were brilliant, like in the sense of like the experience that you have being euphoric and having these like absolutely mind-altering, permanently mind-altering experiences where you see the world differently and you ask questions that you never asked before. And I'm sure I can see why people defend these things to the bitter end and just say like they're so positive and all of that, because it does feel amazing. Like that's part of the drug, like that's part of the effect. It's euphoria. It feels great. Like you feel like you've expanded your consciousness and you're understanding other dimensions of reality that you didn't know ever existed before. Like it's a mind-opening experience for sure. But I think the consequences are understated for psychedelics, and I think they're being sold to us as the next big thing. But the groundwork's already set for it just to be another trap. Like it's just, the only way for me, like not to skip ahead to the end, is like you want to be completely sober, you want to be completely in control of your own self, and you want to be making your decisions from a place of like, this is me, I'm completely lucid. There's nothing, I'm not under the influence of anything outside of myself. That's my personal bias as well. And that got reinforced really strongly after the psychedelics, because I gave it a go. I saw the benefits, I saw the costs, but I feel like the costs, like I said, were completely understated. I saw a lot of friends go really deep down those psychedelic rabbit holes, and I also said like there's these other options available, there's these other things we can do. They didn't put the guardrails on, they didn't take it seriously, or they thought that they were. I don't know, but I see the friends and the people that I watched go deep down the psychedelic rabbit hole. I don't think anybody that I know has had a long-standing positive result from the psychedelics. And if they do, generally it's people that don't use them very much, and they use them quite privately, and they never tell a soul. Like, they just keep it to themselves. They have a little peek through the door, and then they leave it at that. People that just keep going back, I think that's the trap of psychedelics. It's so intriguing, it's so inviting, it's so euphoric, it's so altering. Like, you just think it's only going to get better and better and better from that first euphoria, and it does not. Like, it's just the cost goes exponentially up and the reward goes exponentially down. That's my personal opinion. It's not grounded in any kind of scientific inquiry or evidence-based shit. It's just what I reckon. And yeah, so that's what happened next. We were looking at all of that kind of stuff, not to give psychedelics too much of it, but I was looking at like breathing exercises and Wim Hof stuff, like the cold immersion, everything, like anything and everything that people were using, and they're like, this is helping me. I was paying attention to that, and I was trying it, and that's why I did end up on like a bit of a tangent, I suppose, with the psychedelics. But something that kept coming up over and over again, like so many people, like I'd identify somebody and I'd be like, you look like you've got your life on track, but I know that you've come from like I can see your history here, like you've been through all this stuff. So what was the thing? And the thing kept being holographic kinetics. So it was about 2018 that I had my first holographic kinetics session. I went in, totally blind to it, totally naive to it, had no idea what I was doing, had no idea, no one had told me anything. I just heard about it, had to go find out for myself. The first time I heard about it, it was actually a comment on one of my YouTube videos. Like, if you think this thing that you're documenting, it was kinesiology. If you think kinesiology is wild, like, you got to check this out. This thing, it's I can't remember the exact words, but they're like, it's so much more advanced. So I went in and I had my first session, and I made really dramatic, huge changes, and you could feel it immediately. And I was like, okay, I see why people keep talking about this. I see why this is going to be something that helps a lot of people. And up until 2018, I was like, I'm just going to be the cameraman, and I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna try all this stuff so that I have direct experience of it. But I'm not gonna get too involved in any particular thing. I'm just gonna make a big mosaic, like a big picture of all of the possibilities outside the mainstream, so that other people can pick and choose what might work for them. But 2018 to 2020, I continued to look for more things, but I kept getting holographic kinetics. It kept coming back. This person, that person. So what they'll go, maybe someone would even list a whole bunch of stuff. They're like, I tried this and this and this and this, and then holographic kinetics. And I was like, all right, so maybe I got to go a bit deeper with this. So you can learn holographic kinetics. I signed up for the course in 2020, and I did a 7-day thing with it, and I learned it. I learned the fundamentals, the very basics of it, and I had such profound shifts from that as well, and such profound personal changes. But at the same time, it was like all of the trauma and all of the suffering that I've been immersing myself in for 5 years or so, it caught up with me. Like, I didn't realize the toll it was taking on me to sit with people constantly telling me their deepest, darkest trauma and all of the terrible things that they've been through, and all the stuff it was triggering in me, and everything that was surfacing in me. I was still trying to bury it. I was still trying to mask it. And I think I did that a little bit with the psychedelics, and I did that with a whole bunch of other things. I think I did it with the documentary itself. Like, I'll just make it about everybody else so I don't have to look at myself. I did that for 5 years. And then I guess when I did that 7 days, holographic kinetics, it forced me to confront myself, because when you do that 7 days, you're learning how to do this process and you're practicing on each other. So you're bringing up all the stuff in each other. And I mean, all of a sudden, I couldn't ignore any of my deepest, darkest issues anymore. I was working on them. I was making changes. But as all that occurred, even prior, when I just had the single session on its own, and I started to acknowledge what was true for me, my relationship fell apart. So I had this relationship since 2015, so pretty much the entire project up until that point, I'd done that with a partner beside me who believed in me and believed in what I was doing. And it just fell apart. Like it reached that breaking point. It went from being great to being gone so quickly it wasn't funny. And I believe it was because like I'd been denying everything and avoiding everything, and all of a sudden I decided to face everything at once, and that was like a massive catalyst for all of the drama and conflict and falling apart. Of course, it makes perfect sense in hindsight. At the time, it obliterated me. Like I was just absolutely distraught, in tears constantly, like just absolutely wiped out, like just not okay. But the story must go on, right? So also 2020, when I decided to start learning holographic kinetics and facing myself, the pandemic was peaking. So I left my long-term relationship, I left my long-term home. I had no fixed address during lockdowns, which just actually meant that with no fixed address, it didn't matter to me. So I was traveling around Queensland and Northern Territory because they were the only places that were still open. Northern Territory was actually still totally normal. There was no restrictions on how many people could be in the venue, none of that stuff. So it was actually a really nice bit of time to get away from all the madness of the world so I could focus on the madness in myself, you know? So there was definitely a period there, 2020 to 2021, where I was like living, I had a ute and a swag and an esky, and I was just out on country, and I was learning this holographic kinetics, and I was exploring different communities. I was meeting all these different people that had these different perspectives, and I was also studying. I started formal study, like I did a certificate for in mental health peer work, because I was like, also now I want to understand a little bit like what's going on in the actual system. I want to participate a little bit and get a bit of direct experience of what it's like to work in the system before I go on and criticize it. This is 5 years in. So I completed my study in my laptop in my ute, did my placement on the road at all these, with these different places and these different people. And I was also trying to make this thing, like, so it turned into like mostly just video diaries where I was explaining what I'm thinking and feeling in the present moment, what I'm going through. And I was like, how in the world am I going to return to the main plot here and complete something that even vaguely resembles a 10-year-long documentary? I had no idea. But 2021, I got back to Brisbane, back to Gold Coast. I started to reassemble myself, reassemble my life, but I'd got rid of like so many layers and layers of trauma and suffering, and I'd done some really deep inner work using holographic kinetics, because I continued to go back and learn more and more and more while I was on the road. I'd just pop in wherever Steve was teaching, I'd show up. Steve Richards is the creator of holographic kinetics. And it was just really good. Like, I re-established myself back where I'm from, but I didn't feel like me anymore. Like, I was a totally new person. And then the healing from there, because I did so much so quick, internally, the external started to shift. So 2021, 2022, I started to rebuild my life from scratch. Like, I was living in $180 a week university accommodation, and I got a job in complex mental health. So I was working with schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, borderline personality disorder, acquired brain injuries, you name it. Like, if it's complex mental health, I was doing it. So I got that direct exposure because I had that qualification now, and I started working in the system. During that, I met the partner that I have now, and early days when I was dating her, a lot of my trauma and a lot of the things that kept coming up, it was around, like, I never knew who my father was. But every time it would come up, I would just bury it again. Every time, I would bury it again. It came up so many times. And people would say to me, my best mate said to me, Jake Blatchley, at one point, he's like one of my most long-standing friends. He said, you gotta find your dad. You gotta find your dad. He gave me all these like little prompts to, like, just do something about it. Just do this little thing. Just do that little thing. And then I was having these sessions, and I'd finish the session and I'd go to bury it again. And people would say to me, like, it's coming up for a reason. You need to look at this. It's not just something that you can clear in here or in your heart, like, or in your internal. Like, you've actually got to, he's out there. Like, you have a father, a real father, and it doesn't matter how much trauma you clear around this, like, it's coming up for a reason. So eventually I stopped burying it. And as soon as I stopped burying it, I found the dude. And I found him through a YouTube comment on a YouTube video, just like all of the greatest things that happened along this journey. Like, so somebody commented, I was your mum's roommate 30 years ago or whatever, and I reckon you look like this fella, and sent me his Facebook profile, and there's my dad, spitting image of me. We went and did the DNA test. The doctor's laughing at us, like, you're identical twins, basically. Like, are you joking? Is this a prank? And then immediately after I found my dad, I had this long-standing belief that I couldn't be a father because I never had a father. And then it's like, it shifted in me. And then I find out my partner's pregnant. And then I find out I'm going to be a dad and all these pieces. So I continued with the mental health work. I continued with the holographic kinetics. By this point, I'm facilitating holographic kinetic sessions for people in the community and helping other people change their lives. So I went from, like, the system's broken, how can it possibly be this way? This is such a crisis, let's just make some noise and get some attention and make some changes. But that's not actually what helped. Like, we never needed the attention, we never needed to make a big thing and make everybody angry and reactive. We just needed to actually figure out how to heal ourselves first and then go and contribute that to others. Now, it took the 10 years for me to get there, you know? So, yeah. I found out I'm going to be a dad. I'm doing this amazing transformative work, and it's actually helping people. I'm working on complex mental health, and then right towards the end, I was like, all right, I want to get closer to the cause of the effect. So I put in my resignation with the complex mental health stuff, and I got into child protection with the residential youth work. So this are kids that their foster placements have fallen apart. They've got nowhere else to go. They're in residential care. And they got a lot of behaviors, a lot of trauma, a lot of history, and yeah, that's where sort of I ended up towards the end of this, like, 10 years that I gave myself, and it's been really eye-opening, and like, it's full circle, because the thing that initiated all of this was, like, I saw these teenagers in complex mental health that were at risk of suicide, and they took their own lives because their support got removed. So now, at the end of it, I find myself supporting these vulnerable teenagers. It's just wild how it works. Like, you could not have ever scripted the last 10 years. Yet here we are. Like, this is the story that's emerged. So I just wanted to actually take the time to make something to say, this is what occurred. This is how I got from where I was before to where I am right now. And also to say, like, the reason why the time and the resources allocated to making content has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk isn't a negative thing. It's super positive. It means that we've actually found something that works, and we're applying it and contributing it to community as quickly as humanly possible, because there's so many people that need this healing, and it's available right now, and it's effective right now. We just gotta get the word out now, right? Like, and that's not even really the problem either. Like, we've done an event recently, and there was like 28 people in 2 days showed up and had, like, dramatic changes. Like, they're just so happy when they are complete with those sessions. And I've got another event this Saturday. There's so much going on, so much positive change. So the fact that there's not a lot of content, the content reduced, actually was because the impact that was actually happening was increasing so much from me not making content, because I was so busy actually being in people's lives, being in community, assisting others with this work. So that's that. If you got anything out of this from the last 10 plus years, please let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, because I might come back and make something a little bit more explanatory, like share a little bit more of, like, what's really going on. I can't promise you that. But yeah, if you want to get in touch, because there's still big things I want to do, and it's got nothing to do with content anymore. It's got to do with acquiring property, acquiring resources, getting like particular, like, clinical psychologists and people that I need to write paperwork and create stuff. Like, We've got big stuff that we want to do into the future, but it's not going to be something that is constantly turned into content, because the content, honestly, and you ask any of my YouTube friends this, your mate Tom, like, would be a good one to ask. Content just takes so much of your time, resources, and energy, and if you've got somewhere better to be applying that, I think that you should be. I think the world needs you. I think the world needs a lot less influencers, and it needs a lot more people.